I am Henrique Olifiers, one of the co-founders of Bossa, and Bossa is a video game studio like many others, and have some good games like I'm Bread, Surgeon Simulator, and we play a little bit with VR as well.
Okay, so you run a meetup, don't you? Do you want to tell us about the meetup?
Yes, we do run the London VR meetup. Every 2 months or so, we get around 50 people into the studio from all over Europe to talk about what they have been doing in content, in hardware, ideas of VR. It's a very ideas spreading environment, which is what we need at these early stages of VR, right? We need to learn from each other's mistakes so we don't have the mistakes ourselves.
So where does virtual reality fit within Bossa Studios then? We've seen some of what you've shown to the public, but where does it fit commercially in terms of your company? Do you use it more to sort of show how innovative you are, or are you starting to consider full-on commercial development of VR titles at the moment?
Well, that's a very good question, and one that I wish I could answer with a different answer today, but I can't, which is basically we are learning. We are investing in VR to acquire the knowledge, so when the time is right for us to create a product for consumers, for players, we have the knowledge to do so. Right now, there's a lot of money going into hardware development, right? You have 2 billion acquisitions of Oculus Rift, and you have everybody throwing their money to create new headsets. But there's almost none running into content production. And this is the big problem that the industry will face. When you think about any platform that's being launched, games platform like the PlayStation, the Xbox, or whatever, those people, those companies put a lot of money into content. They create first-party games, they license third-party games, and they make sure they have exclusives that eventually sell the hardware. VR is not doing that. So, and we are an independent studio, which means that if we make a VR game put in the market and nobody has a headset, we're not going to get our investment back. So basically, we are learning how to do VR. So when the time is right for us to make our first VR game, a real VR game, we are ready.
So well, that's a really interesting point, because you do have several formats now and several development toolkits. So you have Unity, Unreal Engine 4, Cardboard have their own now Unity program and their own SDK, and Gear have their own proprietary, Samsung have their own proprietary ones. So, but we have seen quite a few really good Samsung Gear VR experiences yet. Would they have been financed by Samsung to showcase the technology? And what are the headaches for a VR game developer, gaming company developer like yourselves that you really want to not exist? You know, do you want that one kind of development platform that outputs to them all?
Well, I know that Samsung VR has been commissioning some developers to make the content. Some of the content that you see on Samsung Gear is the same as you see on Oculus and so on, is enthusiasts who got the kit and they created something to test the platform and so on. That's very different from a proper commercial launch, right? It's something that you have to fund to a very high extent, and you need to expect some return back in terms of sales. If not, a lot of people have the device, you're going to run into negative. Our biggest challenge right now is lack of clarity. Nobody knows when something's going to be launched, how much it's going to cost, how many are going to be in the hands of consumers, and how fast. On top of that, you don't know how readily the consumers will accept the devices as well, and the technology. So there is a lot of questions in the air for anyone to make a good, informed decision in investing in a game, unless you are experimenting with it, right? We believe in VR. We totally believe in VR. We wouldn't even be experimenting with it. We know it's going to be the future. We just don't know exactly when and what we decide. Those are the 2 questions we need off the table before we go all guns blazing on it.
And what's your focus or thoughts on the mobile platform, which is a huge gaming platform, isn't it? We see endless amounts of HMDs coming out now. Does that excite you, and do you think mobile at the moment has the capacity to deliver great VR experiences if done well?
No, I don't think so. I think that the real VR experience has to achieve what we call presence. And that has a requirement of from frame rate to resolution to memory and a lot of technical concerns. What we see today on VR mobile is the very first steps to achieving what is the ultimate goal, which is completed wireless VR, right? People are using mobiles as a means to an end. Mobile VR doesn't make any sense. My mobile stays on my pocket, serves that purpose. What you want is wireless VR. The problem is that you cannot get the bandwidth from a CPU, a computer, to the headset without wires right now. The technology doesn't allow that on a consumer level. So what do? You get a computer input in your head, which is essentially a mobile phone. Mobile phones were not made for this. There is a lot of stuff running on a mobile phone that's completely pointless on a VR experience. And that's why they go hot, the experience has to be short, you have all kinds of problems with frame rate and so on. From a consumer point of level, I also think that we want to deliver the best possible experience for the player the first time they see VR. And mobile is not that right now. You have much better experiences with a wired headset than you have with mobile. So I much rather that people, their first experience with VR is the best one. So they spread the word and people get excited. And one which is okay, it's not bad, it's good, but it's not the best one.
So you might probably be quite excited, or I'm sure you probably know that about OpenVR. So that company are trying to create a very open platform with a headset that can actually use dedicated screens or mobile inserts to open up the whole thing that are more of an open source system. You haven't heard.
Two things that we're talking about then. It's open source is what you mean an API or something like that you code once and you get support for everything?
Yeah, so they have they were going to announce 2 solutions at GTC.
Right, yeah. So there's going to be VR standards. There's no question, right? And we had this with the 3D boards, for instance, 3D accelerator boards in the 90s where you had to make a game for each individual brand or 3D board, right? That's gone. We now have DirectX and OpenGL, you go for one of them, you're supporting all the ports. VR is going to be the same thing. There's a lot of companies who come forward with their own APIs, OpenVR, or it might be Valve coming with Valve VR, or it could be anything. That's not a major concern. We know it's going to happen. My major concern is the disparity between the technologies. And the disparity to an extent that you get in touch with something which is not as good, and you experience that, and you judge the rest of VR by that. Because it's not like a TV that you can see on a shop, 3 TVs, and you know, oh, this one is the best because it looks great. VR is a headset. You put it in, I don't like it. You're not going to put a second one to see if it's better. You don't have the comparison. You lost the client there. This is my concern, and this is why I'm not that enthusiastic about the mobile VR that you see right now. I mean, this is a personal point of view, right? There is a lot of enthusiasm in the personal VR, and it makes complete sense, but that's the future. Wireless VR has to be the future. You don't want people tripping on wires and all that.
From a commercial point of view with Bossa Studios, am I right? Because I think I did just catch the start of it. You have been doing VR for a long time. Is that you had from 2001? Did I get the right?
No, individually we have. Like I have done VR from 2001. And
was that not on your talk?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, sorry, that's what I mean.
It was
yeah.
me, but not Bossa. Bossa is 4 years old.
Oh, okay, right, okay. Yeah. So I'm just interested in the business model. How there seems to be there's so many companies I read about now that are jumping on VR with they could be from completely different markets as well. They could be TV producers, gaming companies, tourism companies, everybody. Do you think you're any closer to establishing a business model of how to finance high-end content? So we see brands using VR a lot to promote a service or a product as one-off activations. Are you possibly exploring the idea of more integrated brand sponsorship of VR content that can actually be delivered to the 500,000+ Google Cardboards right now to finance, something pretty high-end?
That might be viable, yes, but it's not something we do. We make games only. And for that, we need players with VR headsets, and they don't exist yet. All we have is 150, 200,000 people who have dev kits, and that's it. That's not a user base that we can serve. If we sell 10% of that user base, which is incredibly successful, is 20,000 users sold, right? How much money can I put behind a project to sell 20,000 units? 50,000 pounds and 100,000 pounds? That's not a big game. That's the great conundrum. There are other ways to finance VR, but not as games right now, unless you have someone who has a vested interest for you to launch a game, like a platform holder, Oculus or whoever is manufacturing headsets. That should happen. It's not happening. Then you can go around and try to do other things, like you can do promotional, you can do kiosks, you can do architectural visualization, you can work for the military doing simulations and so on. All those markets exist, and they are viable business models. It's not just the business model that we are engaged on, which is serving the player.
Right, sorry I did go completely over my time there, but you were so good I didn't run over.
No,